Next up, we have all of the picks that we were able to catch over at the Chicago International Film Festival. Like we had mentioned in our preview, it is one of the best festivals in the Midwest in terms of all the international picks because you have a bunch of movies that are the submissions for their respective countries, and it's just a really cool way to go to a bunch of theaters here in Chicago. So I'm going to be breaking down a lot of my honorable mentions or things that I have seen, and then I got my top 10. I obviously had to make it out for Eric LaRue, which I don't know if you caught back at Tribeca when it had its premiere, but
No,
this
I
is
missed
a
it. I
movie
missed it.
that comes from the man, Michael Shannon. I don't think it's his... Oh, it is his directorial debut.
Yeah.
Interesting. I thought he had done something else. I know producing-wise, he was able to get some really big people on here who he's worked with in the past. Jeff Nichols, who also has a movie, Bike Riders. He came on to support him here. And look, it's got an interesting premise in terms of it being about a mother whose child is the school shooter. And because of that, she's trying to get back into things in terms of her relationship, in terms of the town, in terms of her church. And it creates this really weird dynamic in where, I don't want to say she's playing like a selfish person, but it becomes very much revolved around not Eric LaRue, but Mama LaRue, Janice. And she does a really good job in the role, but I just felt that the script, and it's not so much the direction, he's got some interesting moments here and there that are very awkward, but the script was something that by the end of it, I was holding on to a 3.5 stars, and I just couldn't by the end of it. The husband in this, who is dealing with things in his own way, is played by Alexander Skarsgård. The range in this man is incredible. He can go from being the cockiest guy in Succession, he can be a literal Viking. Here, he's the timid Christian father who doesn't really realize that he's getting flirted upon by a local church member played by Allison Pill, who does a fantastic job as being, for the Lord, just helping a neighbor out whenever they can. But there's not much there for a lot of the characters that really resonated with me. And it's one of those where people who have been in a scenario like this, something this traumatic, I'm very curious to see what they would think about this, especially when it comes to a final talk that happens in the movie. I would highly, highly, highly recommend another film that you and I have mentioned in the past, which would be, and I don't have it queued up here, but Black Mass, right?
Oh, yeah, the Fran Kranz movie. Yeah.
That one's very good.
Yeah, so it's got sort of maybe a similar kind of like a somber, mournful tone.
Dude, throughout the movie, they're trying to build up to this meeting that the pastor really wants to have so that she can meet up with the parents. And it's almost like this dude just kind of wants to get the contract. I want to be the first. I want to be the other pastor. I want to make sure that I'm the one who's kind of overseeing the Alexander, what the heck, bro? That he's the one overseeing everything. But it's played by this pastor, and I don't know who the actor would be here. This man, it has to be this dude right here.
Paul Sparks?
He plays the pastor so well in the most terrible way. He is the most annoying pastor to the point that not only is he not fit for the job, halfway through, it's very difficult with this image. This man just embodied Tim Robbins. Throughout the entire bit of awkwardness and anything that happened, he would make things even more awkward. I don't know. There was just so much to his character that I despised, but it was a solid performance from him. So again, it's a very mixed movie for me in terms of what it was trying to go for very heavy subject matter. But as Zach mentioned right there, I would highly recommend checking out Mass. I was adding a black to it. This is a Johnny Depp one. I would highly recommend Mass. Mass is the best version of this movie.
Nice.
Going through a couple of...
I was just going to say that Eric LaRue, he directed it, but Michael Shannon didn't write it. So I'm curious what brought the script to him as well, because it's not even a writer with a lot of credits to his name.
It may have been a play, if I'm not mistaken. One of these was also written by somebody else, or might have been a novel. But he's a Chicago guy, so I was happy to at least go catch his movie. I just wish it was a little bit better. Some of the other international picks would have been this duo here that I told you of Bad Living and Living Bad. 2 films from Portugal, one of which got the submission. And I was really hyped for these, and they're good. But they're very, very, very slow. One perspective is covering this hotel and all of the women who work at this hotel. They've lost a patriarchal figure, and they might even lose the hotel before they maybe lose their minds together. And it's very slowly paced. If someone is brushing their hair, you are going to see every strand of hair getting brushed. This is a movie in where, from this perspective, you're seeing all of the struggles that they have to go through before the people come in to take over or visit the hotel. Whereas Living Bad is from the perspective mostly of all the rich people. I will say, though, you need to watch Bad Living before you watch Living Bad, in my opinion, because this one kind of sets the in and out points of the I want to say like The Weekend, and then here you're seeing moments from the first movie that they never really showcase to you if you were just watching this movie alone, if that makes any sense. But while this one is a little bit slower, this one's a little bit more fast paced because you got multiple rich people who are going through their problems and such. It's very interesting. I'd be curious to revisit it again later in the future because the performances are really strong. I think it's a really good script. It's just they're both pushing 2 hours, and you end up getting a lot of repetitiveness, especially when you're following the perspectives again as you swap between both movies. But I want to say Bad Living is the one that they submitted for the Oscar, so it'll be interesting to see how far that gets on the short list. But a very interesting concept.
Now that you've seen them, how would you compare it to the Disappearance of Eleanor Rigby, another film that showed us two sides to one story?
I like the pacing more in that. But I do think the story here is a little bit better. It's just the pacing that really did it for me. But yeah, that would be a pretty good comparison to it. And I want to see more movies that do this because I'm a big fan of that, of being able to get a different perspective once you switch out what it's like to be not the person serving, but the person being served, or how someone misconstrued something, or how someone didn't remember something.
It's a really, really interesting idea. Like it takes the whole idea of like a Rashomonic film structure and spreads it across several films. And I feel like maybe even TV has had some successful attempts at this style. But yeah, I think we've yet to see a pair of movies that like really, really ran with this concept in the right way.
Maybe that Kevin Costner movie where he spent all his money on it, that's going to be the 2-parter next year.
Yeah.
We'll see what they do there. A couple of other ones going down the honorable mentions list. Departing Seniors. It was a movie that was there for opening night, in where it is a Chicago-based filmmaker, someone who I've seen her previous work at Chicago Critics Fest, I want to say, with Runner. And she's now moved up her feature film from a script that's very much influenced from a lot of 2000s movies, from Scream, 90s movie, but Scream... what's the Bring It On Again? There's a lot of references in this movie, many that were going over my head until you just sit there and you go like, that is from that other movie. But it does it in a way where it's very playful. And it's a very enjoyable movie where you're following these kids who are all getting kind of murdered one by one by this killer who's wearing the drama class mask, and you don't know who it is, and they do all of these little red herrings to a bunch of characters that you're trying to figure out who it could be as you follow who I consider the Mexican Tom Holland. He don't look like it too much here, but there are moments where this man is staring at the screen, and he even's got the Tom Holland like gasping for air type thing. But he's really good. It took me a while because I couldn't find it here, and even when you go to his IMDb, let me backtrack a bit here, it doesn't appear. Do you recognize this boy? Right here, you can see a little bit more of his Tom Hollandness. A little tired Tom Holland. He's from Primo.
Oh.
He's got Primo.
He looks handsome with the longer hair.
Oh, yeah, no, he's a good-looking dude. He plays a Mexican-American gay dude. Like, that's his character. And while it could really fall into those tropes of, like, I got it, you're, like, checking that box, it's, like, very funny how introspective it is because the writer himself is taking from a lot of his own story. So there's a lot in this movie that I like. The reason why I couldn't give it more than 3 stars was because the ending, when it comes to the killer's story, as cool and interesting as it is, it gets pretty shoddy towards the end, and ends up becoming a movie that reminds you more of the better versions of what it's trying to homage. But it's still a really interesting story, pretty fun movie. And I want to give a big shout out to I want to say it was Irian Roach. She's in a couple of movies in this fest, including shorts. She's fantastic. We need to see her in more stuff. She had that like cameo role in Candyman. I want to say she was one of the girls in the bathroom scene. She's really good in both of the projects that she was at Chicago. So shouts out to her.
Very cool.
One of the other ones that I have on here is a movie, if I'm not mistaken. that comes from Iran. Yeah, confirming that. Terrestrial Verses takes a bunch of vignettes. So I wasn't sure what I was going to get out of this movie until like you get to the third one and you realize every single shot is just going to be these static shots of people sitting down dealing with an authority figure. So this is a woman who's trying to get her car back, but they don't like that she has short hair. And it looked like the person who we got on camera as they projected in the back had longer hair. What do you mean that's your boyfriend? Boys should not have long hair. This is a guy who wants his license back, but he's got a lot of markings, and the person needs to see if his markings are fit for him to drive. There's a one dealing with a woman who lost her dog. That was probably the most profound one because they tell her to go to the police office, and she's just standing there in the police office, and she hears a dog, but they don't want to tell her if it's hers or not. It's all of these little moments that I think build up to this idea of what it's like to live in a regime and what you have to do when you can't get a job, you can't get help, you can't even tell the stories that you want to without it being kind of siphoned or censored through whoever's in charge. A really interesting story. I'd be curious to see how they release this one or what type of limited release it gets because I don't think it was a submission for them. But I would argue for it. I think Iran right now is actually going through some beef that the submission they chose was propaganda. So the film committee over there said this is disrespectful, and I think they're in limbo right now, and they did not submit one. But
yeah,
I thought this was a very interesting approach.
Iran's one of those countries that has lots of really incredible filmmakers, but the various government forces or film commission forces don't always choose those great films from great filmmakers as the country's submission for whatever political reasons. So
they don't want it to speak for them.
Yeah, it not getting that endorsement isn't always necessarily like a knock against the film.
It's almost worse, right?
Right.
If you do get it, it's like, they shouldn't be supporting you. Yeah. But I will say that there is one vignette, because again, they really all are static shots. There's one vignette where it's a director who submits a script about his father and how abusive he was. And they're like, no, you can't show the patriarch being abusive, and he needs to rewrite it, and he ends up like cutting up all of his script up to the point that he wants to do a story from the Quran, but when he picks the story of Joseph getting seduced, they don't count that one either. So he's like, I can't even do the stories that y'all want me to do. And it's this really funny a satirical take on not even being able to tell the stories when you're following the rules. But Terrestrial Verses, it was a pretty interesting movie.
Nice.
I'd keep it on your radar. Probably the biggest one that I paid out of pocket for because it was one of the special centerpiece screenings that also had an Academy Award winner. Bro, she was this close to me when she walked out. Saltburn by Emerald Fennell that had her in between the movie dipping out. She didn't care about the reactions. She went to Giordano's. This woman came back. I wish I had a picture of her. She came back with a pink shirt that said, I just got stuffed in Chicago.
That feels like a very Emerald Fennell shirt.
Pizza joke for sure.
Yeah.
Saltburn. What can I say about Saltburn? You've seen Cruel Intentions?
Yeah.
So Zach. Saltburn is a movie about rich kids who do rich things in rich schools. I want to say, would it be a boarding school or is it I don't know what their schools are called. Is it higher than a boarding school?
Let us know if you know what British boarding schools are called, because
I don't know. I know a lot of people made fun of her because the joke is that she is also super rich where she came from, and that the Saltburn, which refers to the manor, it was her house that they just filmed it there. She pulled like a weekend thing. They're saying it's just boarding school. This is where these two characters meet in what was Barry Keoghan's name? Oliver. And specifically Jacob Elordi's Felix, who he kind of falls in love with, doesn't fall in love with. You're following it from the perspective of Barry Keoghan's character, who you already know is going to be off-kilter to some degree, right? And he ends up getting invited to stay at Saltburn because Barry Keoghan's character kind of has a lot of turmoil going on with his parents. So he joins his family and kind of becomes a new adopted child who may be a little too attached. This is a movie where she does so many shots and lingers on them. And in the Q&A will tell you, when everyone's asking, why are you trying to be so provocative? She's like, is it provocative? I'm just trying to hold the shot to see how much you can take. It's like, bro, if you're acknowledging that you're trying to see how much the audience can take, it sounds like you're trying to see how much you could push the audience. I am so mixed on this movie. I think you and I both really appreciated Promising Young Woman.
Yeah.
But we heard a lot of the critiques. Damn, is this one to have in the holster for those people who wanted to call her out? It is... She's just trying to be a provocateur here, man. I want to look for a story in here. There is a take that she said that I don't want to spoil that makes it more gothic. And I was like, okay, I saw some little Easter eggs in the background. I can see that being an interesting take, a completely radical different take on the story of a guy who joins this rich family. But, like, it looks so pretty, and that might just be it. There's some great performances from a lot of the cast in here. Jacob Elordi is great. Out of all the internet boys, shout out to him, dude. He made it out of Kissing Booth. Archie Medicue, who you were just mentioning earlier.
Gran Turismo, yeah.
Gran Turismo movie. The dude is great, man. But I feel like she chose him as an afterthought because it just so happens to be the darker-skinned character who says a lot of the "you don't belong here" lines. The parents are fantastic, though. The parents are played by Richard E. Grant. No complaints. And Rosamund Pike. No complaints. I would even argue that Rosamund Pike is such a goat. I think she's making fun of Emerald Fennell within the movie.
I heard someone say that it feels like Rosamund's the only one who has the right tone.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah, she gets it.
Carey Mulligan also kind of has an interesting little, I want to call him more of a cameo role in here, very side role. Yeah, she looks fantastic in the movie. But overall, there is a lot to be intrigued about in this movie. It ended up being like a Spring Breakers for me.
Interesting.
I'll leave it at that. Some people are really going to love it. I'll revisit it soon. But it's one of those where you don't hate it, but you really wanted to love it. So you're left in that middle ground of kind of being disappointed and wondering, what were you really trying to say?
Right.
She kept arguing with Mimi, the director, who was running the Q&A. And like Mimi would say something, she's like, not really. And then proceed to kind of agree with Mimi, like I didn't understand what was going on in that Q&A.
Given that this is a film that stars some internet favorite actors, do you see this being a movie that gets memed into oblivion and
no,
has
you
lots
don't
of...
understand the type of shots that she does in this movie. It is literally just to bait people. I can't spoil a single one, but there's a lot of saliva. There's a lot of licking. There's a lot of things, bro. And it's really just meant for people to rip the cam immediately on opening weekend because, like you said, they're going to want to make fan cams of just how awkward and over the top people are. But I will say it's been very funny to see a lot of people bring up his Banshees role. Mm-hmm. There was this one funny meme talking about how he had... This is an example of having so little riz that the man jumped off. This would be the most insane take on that character. I will leave it at that. I'm very curious to see when you catch it. I think you're catching it this week, so we'll have more thoughts. We'll have plenty more thoughts next week, Zach. Yeah. I'm very curious to see your take on it, and then I'll let you know what you mentioned in the Q&A, which could be a much more interesting movie, but I don't think it's fully there. Saltburn. Coming out December, if it doesn't get pushed like a lot of the other movies have.
Yeah.
Looks beautiful, though. Black Box is an Israeli, German, Belgium, like it is multiple different things at once, and it is a movie that covers a group of people who are all living in this block, and the block gets shut down and no one can leave because they're investigating someone in there. It has a fantastic premise, and I can't wait to see this be remade because I think there's so much potential in this story. It's got really good performances that revolve around what could be xenophobia about people trying to shut down this place because they're looking for a threat, but at the same time, kind of like Les Miserables from TIFF, they're not really doing you the favor of protecting you from this building. They kind of want to get you out of the building so that they can create what they want in there.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to revisiting it because there's so much things going on, and it isn't until the end of the movie that you see people's ulterior motives, which I think is really well written in the script. I'd just be curious to see another director's take on it. I'm also not from over there, so there's a lot of these festival movies where there's so much intricacies, if you're not from Hungary, if you're not from Germany, where you don't know what that culture is like over there. So I'm curious to see some Germans, if they saw this movie, to see their take on it. Turns out they like it a little less, but then I'm wondering if they're a little too close to it. Like, my complaint is in the direction, their complaint is like, we don't like what the movie's saying, but I think the movie is critiquing what they think it's endorsing. So Black Box, a very interesting, I don't want to call it a bottle film because you got the whole building, but they are all trapped in this block.
Yeah. There's this like resistance to remaking foreign films that are good because people are kind of like, oh, well, just go watch the original. Just go watch the original Parasite. HBO shouldn't remake that. So like I have this running
and you should watch the original
list on my Letterboxd that I keep of like movies that should get American remakes of those like really great premises that maybe could be elevated by a remake. You're saying this is one for that list.
Yeah, because I agree with you. You don't need to remake it piece for piece. What you're remaking and what you're retelling is the nuances to American culture, right? And sadly, stuff like Force Majeure did not do that. It decided to go the cheaper route. But when you're able to do a translation of like, oh, I didn't understand that from that culture, but I do get it here. The ramen thing from Parasite would be the perfect example where you broke that down to me and you're like, oh, it's because over there it's like a cheap food and a really rich food being combined.
Yeah.
You gave me the American example of that. I'm like, that's a true translation. That's a true remake. And I'd be curious to see what take they would have on Black Box. But I'd recommend that. I think it'd be a decent rental.
Cool.
Keeping with kind of the same themes, Explanation for Everything won the Gold Hugo. And it was actually the last one I saw. I saw it at night. I woke up, it won the award. I'm like, damn. It's about this kid who in Hungary is wearing a pin. Again, nuances that I'm on Wikipedia trying to catch up what this pin means to them over there. And like, I'm still kind of confused. So if anyone's from over there, definitely let me know. But he goes in to take this exam, and that this exam is like really big over there because that's what's going to lead to him going to university or not. But while this kid wasn't prepped for the exam and he kind of failed it, it becomes this debacle where he's able to blame the very liberal teacher that he was scoping him out because he wore his national pin. And I guess that's more conservative than it is left-leaning over there, and it's considered very nationalistic. And I don't know if that's supposed to be a take. You know, it's not one for one, but like what a Confederate flag would be over here, but not necessarily a Confederate flag.
Something
you know,
like
it's a
that.
different take over there.
Yeah.
And I don't understand that. But the movie is tackling those issues of this kid now creating this entire national debacle because while he didn't study, everyone thinks that he was like ostracized, that he was actually picked apart because of it, and it becomes national news. There is a really good back and forth that happens between the teacher who's getting blamed for this and the father. It just felt like a conversation that would definitely happen here in America. And again, not to be a broken record for it, but it'd be very fascinating to see a take on this. Because the reason that it won the award was because a lot of people said that it was very balanced and a nuanced take on what they're dealing with over there. So to me, this was kind of like a primer of just understanding Hungary politics and what happened and the revolution that they had, all done within this kid who's just trying to chill. Like, this kid does not care. You have people who are fighting for the country in different ways, and this kid just wants to like sneak into pools. I wish I had a picture of the teacher, bro. I kid you not. It's Hassan, the streamer.
Oh, yeah?
I wish I had a picture, bro. The pony, man bun and all. So I found it funny that he was the liberal-leaning one, literally talking at his pace and everything.
Some meta-casting there, maybe.
Yeah, I'd be very curious to see people's thoughts on it, especially if you're from Hungary. Let me know more of the nuances here. But very well-directed, very well-written film. I'm just missing that extra attachment to it or understanding of it. But it won the big Golden Hugo for it. So Explanation for Everything. Also, their submission, if I'm not mistaken. So one to keep on the radar if you're looking up the shortlist. The Crime Is Mine is a really funny one. I believe it's a French film that is just really goofy in the sense of it being two friends who one wants to be an actress, the other wants to be a lawyer. The actress got denied a role, and then the guy who denied her ends up dead. The lawyer goes, how about I write a role for you? Just say you did it, and we'll make you super famous. And she becomes super famous. That is until the real murderer, played by the one and only Isabelle Huppert, appears, and more chaos ensues. It's so goofy, bro. It's so over the top.
Farcical from that description.
This and Anatomy back to back is a crazy double feature. It is the most whimsical take on that. I'm not going to say it's the greatest movie, but I also don't think it's a terrible movie. I think it's a really fun watch. So if you're curious on this, keep it on your radar. The Crime Is Mine, a funny little comedy. One that I know you are not going to have the patience to see in a theater, which is why I waited for a screening link. Shout out to the festival for that one. Is Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World. You're the one who told me about Looney Porn, which was this director's previous movie. Yep. I haven't been able to see it. It did play at Chicago, but I haven't seen it because they have not
censored it for
released the
Hulu?
official cut.
Yeah.
Yeah, break that down.
The film opens with like a 10-minute sex tape or something, and it is very integral to the plot of the film. But I don't think those things fly on Hulu, so they just censor the whole thing, and there's lots of like text on screen, like there's a sex scene here. We couldn't show it to you, so here's some others. It's funny. It's a comment on itself, but it's not the original cut of the film.
Yeah, and I feel like he's got that same energy going on here when it comes to this film, because this is a movie in where you're following a driver, and when I say you're following a driver, you are following this driver. She is a girl who also vlogs with a filter, pretending to be like Andrew Tate, like name dropping him and all, and it's supposed to be satirical. People are like, "Why are you talking like that?" But she's doing like a Borat, right? The over the topness in her vlogs is meant to be a joke on who she's making fun of. She specifically works for Nina Haas, which is why I had this movie on my radar, who is running this company who's looking for her to hire the spokesperson that the company needs, who's just really going to be their scapegoat. So she is driving hours upon hours to these different places to record people who got hurt on the job and should be suing the job, but the job is trying to buy them out, because if one of them can submit a good spokesperson type memo, they'll be able to be the front runner, and they get like a measly check. But in the meantime, they're also getting them all to submit, yes, I'm to blame for not wearing my helmet, when that was never like the issue. Like Zach explained with the other one, this is a director who definitely takes his time.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, to showcase how much he's driving, damn, do they show you how much he's driving. But there's some banger moments in here. There's some really good satirical takes on here. Very well written script. It's just a movie that's 164 minutes long. I had the privilege to see it at home, so that's definitely going to be a completely different take than sitting in a theater for 3 hours to take this in. And boy, were there a lot of 3-hour movies this year. I haven't seen Looney Porn, but I do dig his direction. I dig the style and the approach that he takes for his movies, and I would recommend it for the film fans out there, for the Oscar aficionados out there, because I believe this is their submission as well.
Romania.
Is it Romania?
I think so.
There's like so many. It has to be. Romania is one of the countries here. There's a lot of greatness in there, but it's very difficult to recommend it, obviously, to a mainstream audience. But
yeah,
it is pretty good.
Something that I talk about sometimes with those like really meaty long films is that like the experience of watching it sometimes isn't the most pleasant. Like you get restless, but then having watched it, you really appreciate, because there's good stuff in there. So yeah, maybe not if the idea of sitting down for something that long is just intimidating to you. Maybe it's not for you. But if you're not intimidated by that, sounds like there's going to be some interesting stuff there.
The actress who you saw on the front as well, she ended up being the winner of Best Actress for Chicago as well. And honestly, yeah, I'd give it to her. She does a lot. She's really good in the movie. So
very cool.
Shout out to her. Getting into it. That was all of my little honorable mentions. I have a bunch of other ones as well. I'll be making a whole Let Me Explain, kind of going through all of the little tiny pics, some behind-the-scene pictures that we have. But those were pretty much the biggest ones that didn't make my top 10. These would be my top 10 films from the Chicago International Film Festival. The first one that I have is one that we were not able to catch at TIFF a while back. It's a movie called The People's Joker that had such a splash over the border because it was breaking copyright laws, because it was talking about obviously a massive DC character, to the point that WB shut this movie down, reportedly, allegedly, supposedly. Don't know how that story came to be or what happened, because they claim WB didn't really say anything, but they might have said something. It ended up reminding me a lot of that movie from a couple of years back, almost a decade now, where they filmed inside of Disney.
Yeah, Beyond Tomorrowland or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And they filmed it in secret. It's in black and white.
Yeah.
Escape from Tomorrow. Thank you. Beautiful poster, if I recall. Mm-hmm. And in that movie, they were so afraid that they were going to get like copyright stricken, but they were able to put it out in festivals, which is exactly what this movie was able to do. A lot of movies at festivals can release a film, and it could have copyrighted music, anything, because you're trying to sell it, and whoever buys it either needs to clear the rights or they change it up. The DC aspect of it isn't even the issue here. It's the amount of music they put in this thing. If you get the chance to see, if you're curious of this movie at all, you need to see it at a film festival because this is going to be cut up to bits. I'm going to be honest. This did not look like my cup of tea. This looked like vomit. It looked like garbage. It looks like one of the ugliest movies out there.
Yeah.
And it's exactly how it needs to be shot. This is a mixed media type movie. A lot of people I've been seeing trashing it because they called it a Doug Walker movie. And I'm like, bro, I don't know why you're admitting to the public that you watch Doug Walker, but this is Adult Swimish, bro. Vera Drew has worked on a lot of different projects with people who are massive in this awkward type of space, in this like awkwardly edited thing that's done on purpose. It's done for a reason. I would say Doug Walker is trying his best. They're doing it for a reason.
This feels a lot more like punk rock than whatever it is Doug Walker's doing.
Bro, and that's what got me. I'm just going to be honest. I did not think this was going to be up my alley. I thought this looked corny. I honestly thought like they were just trying to stir up a lot of things to get attention. Nah, bro, I cannot name you a more punk rock movie, dude. There are people calling this some sort of Reddit movie. I get it. Anything close to whatever. Yeah, I understand. It's going to be too close to internet talk or whatever. This movie breaks so many copyright stuff. It goes hard, dude. Vera Drew is a G. There are stuff within the script that isn't just super infatuated with DC culture. Like, they understand the lore of Batman and the Joker so much. Like, if you're a fan of anything dealing with Batman, I think, shout out every incarnation of him from the Bat Nipples to the animated series. There is a lot of love there. Yes, it looks like garbage because it's doing this mixed media approach, but like you can feel not only the passion of a fan, but then the way they translate it to their, I don't want a coming out story, coming to be story, I thought was actually pretty beautiful. But the way that they call out the industry, because the point of the movie is that they're playing a person who grows up in Smallville who, instead of saying that they're really sad, gets given Smilex. So they're drugged up. They're doped up. When they leave to go be a comedian at what's SNL, run by a Lorne Michaels cutout, they realize that the establishment is what they need to go after. There is so much punk rock themes to this movie, dude. They call out political figures, and not the ones you think they're going to be calling out, not the easy targets. They are ballsy with this, dude. They call out big comedians. There are some lines here about trust fund kids and how they're the ones running things and they're not really telling you the real stories that they're supposed to. This has to be one of the biggest surprises from the festival. I'm astonished I had it in my top 10. I thought this was going to be very much a movie for a particular audience that wasn't going to be me. And they ended up knocking it out of the park. I know it's not going to be for everyone because of the style. It's very goofy. It's very over the top. And towards the ending, I thought it kind of, I don't want to say lost it, but wrapped it up in a way where that energy from the beginning kind of mellowed out. Very interesting after credits. And it seems like they're going to continue this style of parody, satire, copyright with a horror take next.
Ooh.
But, bro, I was the biggest critical person coming to this movie. So I can't give it a better recommendation than how surprised I came out of it. Very, very dope take for the People's Joker.
Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, I, like you, am just kind of curious if it does get released in a more widely available way, what kind of form it will take, because not just like you were saying, not just the character copyright issues, but all that music. I hope it can retain that spirit footage and that energy, but who knows? But
that's part of it. It's saying screw that. Like the closest thing I can think of it is in hip hop when people will sample and they can't clear it, so it will never make the album. But it's like, that's fine. It'll go on DatPiff. It'll go on SoundCloud.
Yeah,
like,
they just gotta upload it to Vimeo
for
or something.
Free. Bro, if they do that, that'd be the most punk rock thing ever. I like the energy in the movie a lot more than I expected. Nah, it's a very dope take. Shout out to People's Joker. At number 9 is a movie that I know a lot of people have been loving, like absolutely adoring. And you and I thought it was good. It was solid. Yeah. Zach gave his takes on All of Us Strangers when he covered it over for the New York Film Festival. I got to see it at a press screening where everyone was just crying and sniffling. It's the story of two men who live in a building where they're pretty much the only ones there. And eventually, since they're both gay men, they start being each other's company. But one of them in particular has a lot of baggage that they have not gotten over. And the way they deal with that baggage is done in a very, I'll just put it, Paul Mescal movie type of way. This man is always gravitating to these types of stories, in my opinion.
Broken people.
All I can say is, yeah, it's going to hit for the people it's going to hit.
Yeah.
I have nothing bad to say about it. But I may not love it as much as other people are infatuated with it at the moment. But it's solid performances all around. The approach that these two take in terms of being together and how they're dealing with their grief, I thought was really well done. Andrew Scott has, in my opinion, the cry scene of the year. But there were some awkward moments. I don't know if you saw it with press or if you saw it. You saw it publicly, right? Because you ended up not being able to go to the press?
Yeah, I saw it publicly, so I was also accompanied by a room full of sobbing people.
We had a critic. When a spit scene happens, that man choked. I couldn't tell if he was disgusted or if he was coming. It was the weirdest take that we had at the press screening. But, look, I think it's a very well-written script. I think it's very emotional. And I have it as a recommendation. Nothing to take away from it. I just know that some people are going to be attracted to this a lot more than I am. But shout out Andrew Scott and Paul Mescal. The next one that I have is Blackbird, Blackbird, Blackberry. I want to say this is Georgia's submission about a woman who just lives in the small town who ends up finding herself very late in age. She's a virgin, and it isn't until she's this much older that she realizes this new, more wild side to her. And I would compare it a lot to movies that we've seen from Sundance and South by about older women with Mama Cruz. Chicago had one that won a couple years ago. I'm blanking on the name of it. But there was another one earlier this year, Chronicles of a Wandering Saint. Chronicles of a Wandering Saint still takes my older lady coming of age crown, but I think Alina ended up having this one top that, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have this one at third. I still think Mama Cruz is even better than this one, but hey, it's solid perspective, solid story, trend. Great performance. It's been a trend, but it's I think it's less that they're realizing this is a story you can do, but it's them finally getting the money to do these stories, right. And now they're all coming out and doing it, But all three have been able to do a really good job at covering the same ground, but still have their own kind of take on it. And I think the lead performance was really good, and it was just very adorable to see her come to her own, not just with herself, but from the people around her, the people she's never talked back to. And a very solid choice to be the country submission. I'd be rooting for this one to make it to the shortlist. May not make it all the way, but a really solid pick. When I went to go see Zone of Interest, there was an elderly duo behind me. They didn't know each other. They I don't know if they started dating, man. They started giving each other pics. They came to this movie. They're like, "Did you see Blackbird, Blackbird, Blackberry?" They knocked it out. They kept talking even through the intro of the Chicago overlay. This movie may connect people. It's the new man Kazakh is all I'm saying for elderly letterbox critics out there. So Blackbird, Blackbird, Blackberry, a really good take. And we got to give this genre a name. And the older lady coming of age sagas that are out there.
The Stella's Got Her Groove Back genre.
Stella's Got Her Groove. I like that. The next one that I have is Paradise is Burning. This is a movie about three sisters who don't have a mom because she's decided to dip out. She's somewhere else entirely. And the older sister is now stuck taking care of the younger ones. The middle one is in that position where she takes her sister for granted because the sister won't tell her the problems that are going on. So the middle sister just assumes that everything's okay and is looking at her sister as not being the parent or the guardian that she could be if she wanted to. And then you got the youngest one who's just eating a bunch of snacks throughout it. I thought this was an incredibly well-casted movie. All three sisters do a fantastic job. The main premise that they're dealing with is that child services has called, and they need to get someone to play their mom. And only the older sister knows this. And if she can't get someone to play the mom, all their sisters are going to be split apart. It is a funny, yet very sad movie. that again is anchored by the dynamic that the sisters have with each other, and does a really great job at showing you how through everything that they're going through, each one has a completely different perspective from the other, and it's them not sharing what they're going through that causes more of a rift than thinking that hiding the bad stuff would be the better thing to do. I really loved it. I think the ending is fantastic. It's very, very melancholic, and I would recommend this one very, very highly. And it goes very well with my next pick, which is Sisterhood, another one of a trio of girls in France, if I'm not mistaken. The title to this, funny enough, they changed it right at TIFF. The title was HLM Pussy, because I want to say that's the projects that they live in, and that's like the gang name that they want to come up with. But pretty much you have three friends who come from different sides of the track. These two over here kind of live in the poorer side of town, whereas this girl on the left's a little bit richer. But the girl on the left is kind of passing, even though she is Middle Eastern. And she has this incredible moment with her father about, again, kind of the same turmoil of the father keeps a lot from the daughter, so the daughter thinks of him as like a bad dad, when in reality, the dad's just looking out for her. And there's an incredible scene that they have. But what really happens is that this girl tries to help out the other two, because there's some, let's just call it, really shady male figures in the building that are kind of abusing and taking advantage of them. And she thinks that leaking a video is going to help, and it only makes things worse. Not just jeopardizing them and where they live, but also jeopardizing their friendship. People have been comparing this to La Haine. I think any movie comes out and they want to throw La Haine out there if it's French. La Haine's a classic.
Yeah.
I'd say it's in the spirit of it. But I really like the performances in here, and just that idea of, again, being able to not just see the different perspectives, but how those different perspectives clash with each other if they're not being honest with each other. Sisterhood, very good movie. And I'd keep it on your radar. Let's see. Cool. I am on my number 6 over here, which, funny enough, we both talked about it. Anatomy of a Fall. We talked about it earlier in the live stream, but here I'll give it a mention in terms of it being the France submission that was not. Now, Zach has said that Taste of Things, which sadly I missed, I didn't get to catch it at the festival, is the right pick for France. But it seems like the people love Anatomy of a Fall. And it's pretty good. I think it's a really solid procedural movie about an incident that happens on this kind of like cabin out in the middle of nowhere, where two writers may have had some turmoil in the past, which causes this death to lead into a massive court case where people suspect the wife as being the killer.
Yeah, it's a did she do it movie, right? And they really, really stick with that did she or didn't she do it the whole way through, in a way that for some people will be like amazing because they'll be able to like get into arguments about it, and for some people might be a little bit frustrating because they might want a clearer answer. I thought it was pretty great, but yeah, we talked about it before, and I'm sure it's going to continue to be in the discussion as people start assembling their bests of the year lists, although it probably will fall short of mine, I guess, pun intended.
It's got a limited release right now, so it's getting a big rollout, and we'll be discussing it more. And we had more thoughts earlier on in the live stream as well. But I think it's really solid. I think I'd root for her as a lead performance, because I think they do a lot of really great stuff with her, especially with the way that she meshes in with the camera work. I thought the camera work was funny, but I'm actually coming more around to it the more that I think about it. I think
there's some moments that have almost like a behind the scenes of a news van
Succession
footage
style.
It's like it's like the type of zoom where the camera is like trying to find their next shot. It's really interesting, but I mean, this is a really solid movie. So you've got it all the way down at number 5 on your best of the festival. That means you must have seen 4 pretty solid movies. For other pretty solid movies.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. You're right. I do have it at 5. I guess I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I do have 4. Okay, so 8's in my top 5. That's not bad. That's top 5. That's 5.
Solid.
But I did have a couple of other ones that really stood out. Goodbye Julia was the first movie I saw at the fest in terms of in-person screenings, and this is the submission for Sudan, I want to say.
Nice.
It is the story of 2 completely different women in Sudan, which, again, I think this movie did the best job of kind of breaking down the politics without sitting you down and breaking down the politics. You see it through the characters. There are riots that are happening in the streets because the more fair-skinned people up north in North Sudan, did you even know they were split? They feel they're getting infiltrated by the southern Sudanese who are darker. And there's riots on the streets and all these different things that are happening, and obviously the clashes of religions. And I didn't even realize it till halfway through the movie, because I'm watching it subtitled, different languages that they're all speaking. The main catalyst is that you have a couple who can't have children. So there's kind of some back and forth turmoil happening within their relationship, who one day decides to go out driving and hits a kid. And in hitting that child, the husband to this woman right here in red, Julia, chases after her, which again, the context of the political turmoil and the riots that have been happening leads an incident to happen that leaves her and her child without a father. And so the guilt in this woman has her take them, leads her to taking them in to become the maid without them even knowing that the only reason she's taking pity on them is because she's responsible for the father who is not there. This movie is expertly written. The performances in here are incredible. It does a fantastic job of not just talking about, the politics, like I said, but through these characters so that you can really feel it, but just different things in terms of how people approach their beliefs, their faith, their relationships. There are some fantastic lines in here about, can you forgive somebody if you can't reconcile? And one person brings that up for their storyline, and you realize, damn, you just said a line that could apply to 3 other characters. Somebody else will talk about how they approach the subject, and it's like, dang, and you can apply that and answer that over there. Dude, this is such a well-crafted, beautifully directed from a new director as well. Shout out Mohamed Kordofani. I wanted to see more awards come this way. Just the way that they're able to handle all the subject matter was beautifully done. I would highly, highly recommend this one. This is one that I want to see higher up in the short list when it comes to the international Oscars. And I hope it gets a full release because it was a beautifully told story and really stood out with me throughout the rest of the fest. Goodbye, Julia.
Very interesting.
This next one, you just got the screener for, so I'm very curious your thoughts on The Promised Land, which we missed out over in Toronto. This is... Where's this man from? Denmark? Denmark submission, I want to say. And it's about a guy who's technically a bastard, so when he went off to war and he comes back, he kind of wants to have his own land, and nobody really takes him seriously, and much less more seriously when he's like, I want a piece of land over there that no one's ever been able to do anything with, and I want to grow potatoes. It's a potato farming movie, and that definitely sounds very boring. I loved this movie. I thought his character and that dynamic of him feeling like the underdog while then working with the outsiders who need to help him because none of the higher up people want to give him the benefit of the doubt was beautifully told. There's some cliche moments, that old Spielberg trick of showing you something. There's one dealing with a stick that comes back to play later on in the movie. I'm a sucker. I don't know, man. I was really feeling the movie that day, and it hit me on all cylinders. I can see people, and I've heard people say that's pretty slow and maybe very cliche. Not that it's bad, but that they don't really love it. It just hit on all cylinders. I think it's beautifully shot as well as as they mix and match the terrain where he's working out there. That's just horrible, and just... It's called Promised Land, but its original title is Bastarden, and this is a bastard land where he lives in. Like, it's just terrible compared to when he comes back home and they're living in royalty. They're living in, like, all this lavish lifestyle back in the day. I liked all the twists and turns in the script. I think Mads gives an incredible performance, and I personally would highly recommend it and hope that it makes it up on the short list when it comes to the end of the year for Denmark. A very good movie, and I'm very curious your thoughts once you catch the screener.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, obviously, it's got oh, shoot.
Oh, no. Zach loved it so much, I think he dipped. But, Promised Land is Denmark's submission. I think it's going to be a very interesting pick when it comes to awards season. Because when it comes to Denmark, this man's usually a shoo-in. You were saying?
We were talking about mods, but the film itself also sounds pretty interesting. Seems like a pretty methodical kind of movie in terms of its pacing. I don't know if there's a movie out there that you'd compare it to, just because it doesn't necessarily sound serene the way a movie like Patterson, that's also slow moving, is, right? It's something different.
Yeah, it's more like Minari.
Yeah,
it's just
that's another one I was thinking when you were talking about
give me this land and let me see what I could do. I know I'm like behind a lot, and it's an uphill battle, but yeah, he's just doing everything that he possibly can to get there. So, no, I really liked it. I thought it was a standout picture. Getting into my top two, I have a movie that when I saw, I came straight back home and we were recording some stuff, and I'm like, Zach, I don't know if I could ever watch this movie again. This is the most depressing thing. Like, this is just nothing but... It's a traumatic movie that almost doesn't even show you the trauma. The Zone of Interest, a film based off of a novel that supposedly doesn't even cover the novel at all. They pulled a Stanley Kubrick Shining with this and kind of just used it as a reference for the name. The name, as I just found out this morning, is the 40 kilometers around Auschwitz that they considered the Zone of Interest. And the movie follows the commander and his wife, who considers herself the queen, who live right outside. It comes from the guy who made Under the Skin, so this is a movie that you definitely need to see in a theater, because just like Under the Skin, Michael Levy returns to do the score. It opens with a minute of just that score, letting you know, as Zach put, we were having a discussion, putting you in the mode that this is a movie you need to listen to. Break down what you were mentioning from the sound designer.
Yeah, well, so at Q&A at the New York Film Festival, they were saying that the script that was... they developed a script for this film, and they also developed a script of all the things that you don't see, that you just hear. And that script was as long as the actual shooting script for the film, and it ended up being this document that they worked off for the sound design. The sound design of this movie cost them about as much as it did to do the rest of this film, because you
feel it
really, really like immersive, transportive. You feel that whole like eerie atmosphere. I wrote in my review of it that while it is like a quiet movie, eerily, it's never silent. And there's so much in those little bits of natural sound that they get there. You were mentioning that the movie opens with just sound. I think that's Jonathan Glazer's way of indicating to the audience that you're not going to get this whole story unless you're listening to it as intently as you watch it.
Yeah.
So I think it's a pretty remarkable film, and a really interesting way to approach a story like this.
Mm-hmm. I was telling you as well when I came home, I'm like, I hope this doesn't get that traction, that pushback that Oppenheimer got, that Killers has been getting as well, because it's like, yeah, I mean, it is focusing on the Nazis, but it's not empathizing with them. And a lot of people don't realize this idea that humanizing a villain is because the humans are the villains. Like, that's what's putting you into the shoes of, or the boots, I should say, of these people who literally live right there. There are some compositions where you're following them in a garden, and then he decides to do this cut, and it's like he slaps the audience in the face, and you just see all of it right there. But you see none of it. It's still hidden in plain sight. And it's such a scary way to approach it. I saw it in a theater that I wouldn't consider the best audio, to have the best audio getup.
Yeah.
And even then, it still resonated. So I would highly implore you to catch it in like a theater that's got the best surround sound, because that's how the story's being told.
Yeah, this is one where it's like, I mean, I don't know if it'll be in IMAX anywhere, but skip the IMAX. This is all about the Dolby.
Mixing.
It's all about the mixing, yeah.
I'm looking forward to catching the book so that we can have a longer discussion on it in the future. This poster right here is insane.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It really gets the dread and ominousness of the film across.
For sure. And just letting you know, like, this is not a Schindler's List. They are not pulling at any dramatic points at all. This is a movie where you're just sitting there going, like, we're just following these people, and you are led to make a lot of assumptions in their daily lives. You'll see two people interact, and you need to connect what happens after that scene, what precedes this one, where did that character go. It's not holding your hand at all for any of it. I don't know if I want to rewatch this one again.
Yeah.
But I will say that ending, especially doubling it up with my recent watch of Killers of the Flower Moon, holy
They have a lot in common. We'll get into that when we get into Killers of the Flower Moon, but there's definitely a lot in common there.
No, that ending has a lot to...
I feel like it'd be wrong to call any film that talks about like an atrocity like that melodramatic, but by comparison, this is like the least melodramatic. Like there's no sensationalizing or like dramatic music that tells you like how sad this moment is. Like there's the Mika Levy score, but it's done. The story is told so plainly and so dryly, which kind of only makes it that much more chilling.
Yeah. I mean, it's a drum movie. Like they're just boring people. They're just people who are just coming up with plans to make the killings more efficient. And they got some family problems, and the kid may be a general, but he doesn't look like he's smart enough to be it. You're just like following these, not just like regular foot soldiers. The guy, like it's an insanely unsettling movie, and even more unsettling if you end up capturing it. With the correct mixing for it. But yeah, crazy movie. I would highly recommend a movie that we've been bringing up in the past when mentioning this, The White Ribbon, which after the Q&A I realized it's the main guy from The White Ribbon, grown up, just a little older. So that's insane. A crazy double feature if you end up capturing these two together. The White Ribbon would definitely be one that resonated with me a lot. Just catch both of these. They're going to be insane watches. But don't go into the zone of interest thinking that that's the Saturday night movie with the boys. Nah, this is a thinking movie right there. Zone of Interest coming out by A24.
Jeff saw Zone of Interest, Jeff from Carscast, our buddy, back in Toronto, and he was like, yeah, it was really hard to just like keep going about your day after it.
It's an opening movie, I want to say, is what he saw.
Yeah, it was his first movie in Toronto.
Yeah, I don't see how you follow up with anything else there. But yeah. It feels like a cursed movie. I'm not going to lie. It feels haunted.
I described it to somebody as not a haunting movie, but a haunted movie. It really feels like full of ghosts.
They were sinning shooting this movie. There's just something. There's something about how they captured these people that were so evil. Yeah. But that is Zone of Interest, a movie that I know is going to top for a lot of people. But my pick is one that was a surprise selection that came out right at the end. Poor Things, the newest Yorgos Lanthimos movie. Floored me. Coming in here with the live take, with the live rating. I'm going to have to plug it in. 4.5. Dogtooth has been one of my favorite movies from this man. And I am not your average. The new Spider-Man movie is better than the last Spider-Man movie. I think that when I say that something is as good as what I feel was their best movie, that's me really coming out here and giving you the biggest endorsement that I could possibly give it. Poor Things may be better than Dogtooth. I don't think that he's reached this level like he has in any other movie. We have a whole review for it, so we kind of have a whole breakdown there. It follows Emma Stone, who kind of is like this experiment made by Willem Dafoe's character, who's this crazy scientist. He ends up inviting Rami Youssef, who plays his assistant. Emotions kind of unravel there. The older Bella Baxter gets, but then Bella Baxter decides to go on her own journey. What a great name, too, Bella Baxter. Incredible performance from Emma Stone. Incredible performance from Mark Ruffalo, though.
Yeah.
Probably my standout supporting. You had mentioned the breakdown of all of the supporting actors this year, and honestly, all the different just actresses and actor categories. I still have him at number one, even though De Niro's great, but damn, is it going to be such a tight race at the end of the year. I love this movie. In the review, you had broken down that you felt it was more mainstream. I feel like you didn't see it like as a bad thing, but you saw it as him kind of taking it away from his like quirkiness and zaniness. But I think it's him firing on all cylinders. It's almost like the Spielberg effect, where Spielberg is able to take these crazy concepts and the way he's able to make it mainstream is what allows him to be the big director that he is. I loved how he handled it here.
I don't want to say that it's like him changing his ways for a mainstream audience. I think it's him filtering his weird perspective in maybe a more palatable way, palatable package, I guess I'd say. Like it's still got all the strangeness and like examinations of the weird nuances of human behavior that you come to expect from Yorgos Lanthimos film, but I feel like we go on a journey that we can relate to with Bella more than we relate to a lot of his typical protagonists.
For sure. Like Sacred Deer?
I don't relate to that dude at all.
No, there's a shot in Sacred Deer with a shotgun that it's like, you're just like making fun of the people who just bought a ticket to sit here.
Yeah.
Poor Things, I think, is definitely going to attract more people and hopefully ends up becoming the thing that's the gateway to a lot of his other movies. I'm going to get a copy of Dogtooth because Alina's never seen it. She saw the trailer to it. She goes, this looks insane. I'm like, yeah. And watching the trailer, she was comparing a lot of the things that one of the kids goes through to Poor Things. So I like how he's taken this kind of these reoccurring themes that he's had throughout a lot of his movies of ostracized people, and I think he knocked it out of the park with this one, man. She may be my favorite performance for lead actress right now. Definitely top 5 for just lead in general.
Yeah.
I cannot wait for this movie to come out. It is just beautiful, beautiful in every single way. Catch this in a theater. The production design is fantastic. The audio mixing is fantastic. It's raw, dude. Poor Things is my #1 movie from the Chicago International Film Festival.
It's such a good time, and she is so incredible in it. I can't wait for more people to see it. I wish they hadn't delayed it so I'd have a chance to see it again.
They delayed it?
Well, they delayed it like months ago. Like it was originally supposed to come out September 8th. It might have been on digital by now.
Damn. Oh, wow. That is definitely a delay. There was a lot of other movies that got delayed out there at the festival, such as Bike Riders, which I know got pushed because of the SAG-AFTRA, which is supposed to be meeting this week as well. So we'll see how that comes out because a lot of these movies have those tentative December dates, but I don't know what they're going to be doing with them. But these were my picks, my honorable mentions, my top 10 from the Chicago International Film Festival. If you were able to attend, let me know your thoughts down below, what your favorite theater was. My dog did get really sick during it. Lady was pretty bad, which is why I ended up missing a lot of like Sweet Dreams. The Taste of Things screening that I would have watched was around that weekend when she got sick. I didn't get to go to the Gene Siskel bit. If people were out there at the fest, how you compare it to the previous fest, what you thought was cool, if this was your first one, but definitely your picks. Anything that I missed, let me know.
And Lady's feeling better, right?
Lady's feeling so much better.
Everything's all okay. That's the most important thing.
Bro, I was so scared, man. It was insane. Yeah, you could not be sitting at a theater for these 3-hour-long movies when you have a sick dog at home, the way she was sick. But yeah, she was a lot better, and she was happy to see that Poor Thing's got the #1 spot at the Chicago International Film Festival. So let us know your thoughts down below.